All right. Hey, good evening, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Tuesday, August 29th, 2023. This is your evening tropical update, where, of course, we continue to watch the approach of Hurricane Ida to the coast of Florida. Some impacts are already underway here in the southwest coast of Florida, and conditions are expected to rapidly deteriorate through the night tonight and into tomorrow morning as Hurricane Ida makes landfall in the Appalachia Bay region of the Big Bend as a historic storm, one of the strongest ones we've ever seen into the Appalachia Bay region and Idalia rather is expected widely to be a Category 3 or 4 hurricane because she's already a 2 tonight and has plenty of time left to strengthen before landfall. So we have a rapidly intensifying hurricane this evening on our hands. Idalia, of course, sitting here tonight just off to the west of Tampa Bay. That heavier rain and wind is going to start pushing into Tampa Bay in a couple of hours. You're going to start seeing the water rises that are already underway, and then the hurricane is going to move up and into Big Bend somewhere just around Cedar Key or Steinhatchee, move across northern Florida and into southern Georgia, and skirt up the coastline throughout the day. This is the latest from the National Hurricane Center. As of 5 p.m., the maximum sustained winds were 100 miles per hour, and the movements to the north at 16 miles an hour. A nice forward clip. That movement speed will continue, but that northern motion will become a northeast motion sometime tonight and early Wednesday morning. You see that nice bend in the curve and the track there. At this point, the small adjustments to left or right are not too meaningful. The Hurricane Center is kicked a bit west a little bit, but basically we've locked in the same place we've been locked in for a while, which is that upper Appalachia Bay, Big Bend region of Florida. Again, a little bit north of like your Bradenton area and stuff like that, but a bit to the east of areas like Mexico Beach, Tyndall Air Force Base. So this is really kind of locking in on like Perry, Live Oak, just west of Tallahassee, or sorry, just east of Tallahassee, um, Madison. I mean, those are all the areas that are going to get hit really hard with this. This is going to carry heavy winds into Valdosta, Brunswick, Waycross, even into Savannah and Georgia. So a lot of heavy rain, wind, surge type impacts are coming for Florida's coastline. See the latest the latest winds. Right now, mostly winds are in the 20s and 30s along the Florida coastline, gusting a bit higher. But note the hurricane is a pretty good ways offshore right now. It's coming in at an angle, so right now it's still got some good distance. That distance is going to close going into the evening here. So we do have that going on. This is the latest, or the most likely arrival time of the tropical storm force winds to give you an idea of when the winds start. So by later tonight, we're going to expect the tropical storm force wind gusts to get on station. By 2 a.m. Wednesday, a lot of the Big Bend's coastline and some of western central Florida could be getting in on that. By Wednesday morning, the tropical storm force winds, this is again probably a sustained wind, will likely be moving into Jacksonville by 8 a.m. And then Georgia, you get into this in the afternoon. South Carolina Wednesday night, so on and so forth. Yes, these graphics are very funny looking. They either look like potatoes or they look like, well, I guess they look like. Raycon data from Idalia this evening. Showing a free fall of pressure. The latest Hurricane Hunter pass earlier was 968, and then the most recent NOAA pass, which are flying two planes right now, NOAA and the Air Force Reserve guys are also in there, and they are seeing a pressure down to 965. So this is basically a free fall, and it shows that Dahlia's pressure is falling. Anything more than 1 millibar per hour, which is what this is measuring, is millibars of pressure, and the lower the pressure, the stronger the storm. And when you see pressure drops 2, 3 lower each time the storm or each time the eye is penetrated by the Hurricane Hunter aircraft, that's the sign of a quickly intensifying hurricane. Satellite presentation notes this as well. You look at the satellite presentation of Idalia this evening, and you can see these little pink bursts are these little hot towers and little mesovortices that are dancing around what is trying to become a cloud-free eye. And the eye is still obscured by clouds. You can see that the CDO is rapidly expanding. So this was a few hours ago where we had a little bit of a CDO down here, but you mostly had just the thunderstorms around the eye wall. But as we go through the loop here, you can see that that quickly expands. It rotates up shear, and then it kind of gets that little half shrimp look going on. And that's the intensification sign of a strong hurricane or a hurricane quickly developing into a strong hurricane. And now in the last few hours, you have these little twin bursts, another really common sign of an intensifying hurricane. You see these bursts of wider cloud tops here, and these are going to chase each other. And when they do, they leave more clouds behind than they started. And then this cloud shield you see here, this central dense overcast, this will spread southward and then southeastward and then back to the north, and this will be the intensifying hurricane. So I think the eye will pop out in a few hours, but every indication from that and from the radar off the coast of Florida tonight does tell us this is a quickly intensifying hurricane, and you have that kind of dual ring structure as well, which sometimes can indicate that stronger storm. So big heavy feeder band out ahead of it, and then another band out ahead of that, which is sort of like the very fringe of Idalia, not exactly related to Idalia, but some heavy rainfall moving into northern Florida tonight, and then some more into eastern or the western Florida panhandle. And then these rain bands will continue to advance on the state, moving in offshore and across the state throughout the night and into the day tomorrow. This is like the main feeder band, and your core of stronger winds and rain is down here. So some of the landfall models are showing some interesting stuff. The HWRF is coming in at 938 for a landfall, which is a very low pressure. That is a strong Category 4 hurricane. I think at this point this is probably going to be a 4. I don't think she's going to stop intensifying before landfall. Um, Eye wall replacement maybe would save you there, but it's going to be an intense hurricane when it comes in. But the H-warp actually kind of like starts weighting the storm more to the north. So you see in this run, all the reds are kind of evenly distributed around the storm center, which is right here. And as you go to later runs, it actually begins to weight more on the west side. So folks in like Tallahassee need to really be a heads up that the western eye wall of the storm may be ferocious. This upper jet that's kind of pushing Idalia along could be ventilating the storm, and combined with that little cold front, not only are you going to focus some really heavy rain in the parts of Georgia and the Carolinas, like the rainfall totals have come down a little more for parts of Florida, but the winds and the rain up here is going to be pretty nasty in that western eye wall, because that's kind of where the greatest divergence aloft is. So the thunderstorms may want to start pulling up more on that side. Again, typically, guys, the right front quadrant is the worst of a hurricane, and there's no exception here because that right front is what's going to push all the water ashore and cause the devastating storm surge. But I want to note that the backside of the storm, if you live out kind of to the west of the landfall, normally it's like, well, you'll be okay. You're on the west side. It'll be kind of bad, but whatever. It's usually the people on the east side of the storm that have to worry a lot more. But this is going to have a ferocious western eye wall, and it's going to have a lot of heavy wind and rain. Hurricane warnings extend well into Georgia. This is not going to be a hurricane warning right here at the coast. You're going to see a lot of hurricane force winds carry much further inland than you would probably normally see as the storm moves in. So HMON showing kind of the lower end of the intensity guidance, coming in at 952, which is still a very respectable hurricane, Category 3, no doubt, but not quite as intense as the HWRF. So the HWRF probably showing you the upper bound of what's possible with this as it makes landfall. The HMON showing you a bit lower. But again, the HMON is kind of showing the same thing as it moves in. Look where all the heavy rain and stuff is. It kind of waits on the west side, and that heavy rain shield extends much further up into Georgia, where the more scattered rain falls into Florida. So more of a windstorm threat in northern Florida, rainfall threat into southern Georgia, and that carries up into the Carolinas as the storm moves further along. This is your latest models tonight, and I want to point out that yes, there is some uncertainty in the future of Idalia after she's going to move offshore of the Carolinas. There is some thought that she could make some kind of loop. You're going to see a bunch of people on social media freaking out about it. It is not impossible. It is really going to depend if the trough coming down to get her is going to let her stay with it and move off, or if the trough's going to leave and then kick her out. Because what happens is when the trough leaves, high pressure takes back over, and that often can block the storm's exit and then force it to move back down, because again, the high is rotating this way. So if the storm stalls near Bermuda, it can eventually find itself being pushed back to the south and to the east. Or to the west. Now, hurricanes don't like to move southwest, and this will definitely be a much weaker storm when it moves off. So let's worry about that when we come to it. It is something of some concern, but it is not a major concern to me right now. Latest threat matrix from the National Hurricane Center and National Weather Service. These have come back up a little bit. Earlier today, they were a little bit lower. I think for the Jacksonville area, nothing much has changed. You can see those reds have crept back towards that Highway 301 corridor, and I think that's kind of your dividing line of who's going to see the more intense wind gusts and who isn't. So as long as you're kind of off to the east of Highway 301, if you're more towards Jacksonville, you should be in the lower threat for winds, but there'll be a sharp gradient of how strong the winds are. But if you're west of 301, if you're getting into Lake City and Live Oak and areas like that, I mean, this is going to be an intense windstorm. And notice how the Hurricane Center has a few, and the Weather Service has a few areas that could see wind gusts over 100 miles an hour into southeast Georgia. This is going to be a nasty storm when it moves in because of the forward speed and the size of the hurricane. Still expecting those wind gusts up into the 60s and 70s for Jacksonville. I think that's a pretty good call. That's what they're going with, and I think that's what you can expect. I can think you expect to see the winds generally sustain the 30 up to like 40, 45 range, but then gust into the 50s and 60s. It will be very Irma-like in some cases, but I think that there'll be a period where this is more intense than Irma was. It will kind of be more of a roller coaster of going up a higher peak, but then it'll kind of drop off a lot quicker. It won't be the marathon Irma was, and it will not produce the flooding that Irma produced. So I want to say that it is similar in some ways, but it is different in some ways as well. Storm surge threat is going to be prolific along the west coast of Florida. I'll go and switch over to the Hurricane Center's graphic for this, 10 to 15 feet. And if the storm gets a little bit stronger than advertised by them, which is up to 120 miles an hour, Cat 3, then if it goes Cat 4, this probably goes 12 to 18 feet. So thankfully, again, the Tampa Bay region got spared the worst. They're all going to have a 6-foot water rise. It's not going to be fun there. The water is going to rise pretty quickly tonight and early tomorrow morning before the winds move more offshore or more adjacent to the bay than along with it. But you will still see a significant water rise all through the Florida west coast and even off to the west of landfall. But 10 to 15 feet just to the right of where that eye comes ashore is going to get a massive storm surge. And again, Appalachia Bay and the northern Big Bend has never ever taken a storm like this. They've never had even a category 3. They've had a couple 2s. They've never had a 3. They've certainly never had a 4. This will be the worst storm surge anyone alive remembers in this area. So please, please take it seriously if you are near the coast. Get away. There are experienced lifetime storm chasers that are not going that close to the coast because they know better. And when guys like Reed Timmer are like, yeah, no, I'm going to play this card. I'm going to play this safe. Like, that's your cue. If Jim Cantori's not there, you shouldn't be there either. That's kind of a good rule of thumb. If Jim's car is going the other way, you might want to U-turn. That's the way to think about it. So storm surge pretty bad, but again, it will be significant on the East Coast too. You know, you're talking about a decent storm surge total into Brunswick and Savannah and up into the central South Carolina coastline, 2 to 4 feet for a large part of South Carolina and Georgia's coast, and then a little bit of water rise up into the Outer Banks. Nothing too bad because the storm will be trailing away from you at that point, so you kind of got this, lazier westerly, wind moving in. But some water rises are possible along the west, more northern parts of the coast. The flooding rain threat has shifted a little further inland. You can see now the heaviest rain, like we talked about, is actually all up to the north and the west of the cone. This is almost flipped on its head. Typically, this is where the heavier rain would be on this side of the cone. But actually, because of the way this hurricane is going to interact with the jet stream and that cold front, the worst rain actually comes on the north and west side. You see this huge swath of very heavy flooding rain. This is going to be 6 to 10 plus inches of rain for parts of Georgia and some of the western areas, and then, of course, right where the storm makes landfall. Jacksonville has actually come out pretty good on this end, and the rainfall totals are actually coming down quite a bit. I'm not sure the coast, I'm not sure the I-95 corridor is going to get much rain at all from this. A little bit, but not a whole lot. And then pretty low totals, 2 to 4 inches or less for the central, northern Florida area, and then probably 4 to 8 as you work back towards the center of the storm. And then tornado threat is still elevated. It will be, there will likely be tornado watches, as I talked about. The tropical tornadoes, they're fast, but these aren't particularly intense usually, and that tornado threat does reside almost exclusively along the east of the storm's path. So the one good news about being west of the storm is the tornado threat is much lower, but there will be a few tornadoes in the rain bands here. Again, there will be watches. Please take them seriously and just have ways to get alerts on you. Charge your phone before the storm hits so you have a way to at least get your alerts even if you don't have power. And of course, a weather radio is something you should have because those are very nice to have for something like this. So that's what I got for you guys mostly, guys. Again, just looking at some of the latest here, the rainfall threat is very high and it carries well in. So if you're in like central South Carolina, even in the central North Carolina, Lejeune area, Wilmington, Hatteras, central Georgia, don't sleep on this. This is going to be a nasty storm when it comes through. This is going to be a high wind, tropical storm force winds, well inland, heavy rainfall. It's not going to be a picnic. Again, for Jacksonville, guys, wind is your main threat with this one. The flooding threat is low. The rainfall threat is fairly low, but you're looking at a very high threat of winds. You're looking at winds, 60, 70 plus miles an hour in some cases. It's not going to be pretty when it comes through. It's going to be a very intense storm. It will not be the marathon that Irma was, but it will be a very intense, like, wow, this is bad for a period of time is what will most likely be as it passes through during the day on Wednesday. Wednesday night, Georgia really starts getting into it. Wednesday, Thursday morning to Thursday evening. You're talking through the Carolinas, and then it pops offshore Thursday later in the afternoon. So that's what I got for you guys. We're gonna be doing some real-time tracking on the page throughout the night. I'll be at work at 10 o'clock tonight here, 11 o'clock Eastern time. I'll be awake all night, and then I will probably be awake a good part of tomorrow as well because my family will be going through it in Jacksonville. I'll be awake to see what's going on. So you will have lots of coverage coming up. I will maybe try to kick one more video first thing in the morning before the landfall, see what we got going on, and we will go from there. So guys, any preparations done tonight? Be where you're going to be tonight. Do not be on the roads in the morning. They will be closing bridges. It will be getting heavy rain. Trees will start coming down. If you're gonna hunker down tonight. If you're gonna evacuate tonight. Finish your preparations and be ready to just ride this out on Wednesday because it's not gonna be a long ride, but it's gonna be a not fun ride for sure. So that's what I got for you guys. As always, thanks for watching. Stay safe. Let me know if you have any questions, and have a good one.